How have your finances been holding up over the past 12 months? Global downturn is nowhere near being over, but Australia is showing some cautious signs of a modest recovery. Anna Laura and Wilson Luna study business here in Lismore, finance as well, and are authors of a new book entitled Your Family, Your Money, Real Money Advice for Families. And Wilson Luna joins me for ABC North Coast Mornings. Wilson, good morning to you.
G'day, Tony. How are you going?
Very well. How have Australian families been dealing with the crisis over the past 12 to 18 months?
Well, it's interesting, we hear a lot of stories, particularly from different types of families, and some of them are doing it pretty hard at the moment. I suppose there's a plethora of different situations and different outcomes, but generally speaking, some families are finding it hard to get through, particularly over the last, 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, if finances were hit, and I think that was for a lot of people, and particularly with superannuation, what are some of the tips that you would have, Wilson, as someone who works in finance, in terms of recovering and moving forward? What are the key points that we need to be thinking about?
I think one of the key points is, firstly, let's get back to basics and let's look at history for a minute and say, we have gone through some downturns in the past. Generally speaking, like all financial crises or all financial downturns, there's always a comeback. And what we've got to do is look towards history and say, if our superannuation accounts have suffered somewhat, well, stay put, stay in control. And I suppose when it's hard, it's easier said than done.
Sure.
But it's one of those, it's one of those adages that sort of comes true every time. And the markets have bounced back nicely by about, 50-60% already. So at least we're seeing some signs of recovery on that front.
You talk about staying put and staying in control. Can you be specific about some tips in terms of staying in control and taking control if your money is down a bit and you're hoping to recover over the coming period of time?
Yeah, look, I think principally the main thing you've got to take into account is make sure that you're well diversified. And that's the number one recommendation that we give. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, or probably either see an advisor or even do some, if you're into the DIY scenario, make sure that you do some reading on it. We've got to make sure that we stay diversified, because particularly in situations like this where the markets will fluctuate on the way upward or on the way sideways, we want to make sure that we're always well diversified so we're well buffered in case of a bad case scenario.
In your book, Your Family, Your Money, Real Money Advice for Families, you talk about the importance of having an emergency fund. Tell us more about that.
Okay. Well, there's enough going on out there, and I suppose one of the downturns with regards to this particular credit crisis, because this is a downturn due to credit crisis, is that we are probably going to see an onflow onto redundancies. And redundancies is one of, I suppose, a new phenomenon within this age that probably wasn't as prevalent in the last few recessions. And what I mean by that is we're seeing a larger amount of redundancies over the last, and we'll probably see them into the future. And one of the when we talk about emergency funds, we're saying having enough aside for a rainy day. Things like redundancies, things like having an emergency fund just in case something unexpected comes around.
How much is enough for an emergency fund?
Well, it's interesting when we talk about redundancies. There's a lot of stats that are coming out, and one of the main ones I think that's pretty important is they say to calculate that if for whatever reason you're made redundant, you should calculate in terms of 10,000 that you earn. So let's say you earn $50,000 a year, you should have aside 5 months worth of savings, because that's roughly how long it would take, or on average how long it will take to find a job of equivalent salary. So that's a rule of thumb. I mean, obviously it depends on your scenario, and I suppose, what opportunities you might have around the corner.
Sure.
But that's a good basis to go off.
Can take a long time to get to that point, to have 5 months worth of salary tucked away for a rainy day, as you describe it. You outline a 3-bucket savings plan in your book. How does that work? And I guess that could then assist in contributing to that emergency fund.
Yeah, well, we call building wealth, instead of trying to make it too complicated, like we've noticed that I suppose there's a plethora of different information coming to us in terms of how to save and how to have, I suppose, get the money aside for each individual event. We've broken it up into 3 key buckets, and we've said bucket 1 is anything from your budget that's left over, but 1 is those expenses that happen over the next 12 months, from 0 to 12 months. Bucket 2 are for those expenses like, I want to get my child to X school, or we want to take that family vacation, or we want to, allocate it to a possible redundancy that might happen down the track or a possible sickness, etc. So what we do is we say we divide it. Bucket 1 is short-term. Bucket 2 is the types of savings, medium-term, 5 years. And bucket 3 is the superannuation type or retirement type bucket, which is, like you were saying, sometimes it does take more time than what we expect to put money aside. So if we allocate each different time frame, as the time comes there, you've already got it allocated over that time, so it makes it a lot easier. We don't have to think about it. So it's sort of, I suppose we automate the process, so we don't have to think about it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and once again, coming back to your earlier point about taking control and not being at the whim necessarily on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis in terms of what's coming in and what's going out. Wilson Luna joins me here on ABC North Coast Mornings, studied business and finance in Lismore, and author, along with Anna Laura Luna, of a new book entitled Your Family, Your Money. With day-to-day living costs, I guess that's one of the other big issues at the moment, Wilson, whether it be petrol, whether it be things like electricity and even just the basket of goods, when we're going to the supermarket these days. With the day-to-day living costs on the increase, how can that be managed more effectively, in your opinion?
That's one. I suppose that's one of the factors we call them the uncontrollable factors, and a big part of it is planning for them up ahead. And we go through various ways in which that can be done. But the main thing is that we put a process in place where we know already what we intend to spend, let's say, on a monthly basis ahead of time. And that way we can monitor it on a monthly basis. It has to be done in a simple yet. We've got some. I'll give you an idea. We've got some monthly planners on our website, which people can access free of charge. And what it is they're the type of planners that you begin to work out over time what your regular expenses are.
Yep.
And then you go, as the months go by, you go comparing what you're actually expending. And it's surprising to a lot of individuals just how much that differs, as you're saying. And by doing that, you're beginning to monitor and get a better understanding of, I suppose, maybe in some cases you might have to buy in bulk certain items to get that reduced pricing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So there's different little ways to change that, and I suppose come down to the type of budget that you need to live on.
Okay. And we should add a fourth bucket into your three-bucket savings plan, the chocolate ice cream and treats bucket, Wilson.
Yeah, but that one I would blow out of all the time.
Mate, I blow that one out every night. Wilson, just finally, what's the one thing when it comes to our finances that we could all be doing better?
At the moment, I'd probably have to say go back to basics. Go back to basics. And when I say that, we're in uncharted waters at the moment, and I think you mentioned it earlier on. Let's just keep a nice grip on our finances. Let's make sure we're putting aside for a rainy day, because there is a big possibility that maybe some of us will experience that rainy day. Knock on wood, we don't. But if it's there, it's nice to know that we've got enough resources in our emergency funds to be able to get us through that.
Appreciate your time this morning. All the best with the book.
Thank you, Tony.
Bye-bye. Wilson Luna, he, along with Anna Laura Luna, study business and finance in the region. Their book entitled Your Family, Your Money, Real Money Advice for Families.